Thank you for joining me. In this video, I'll be reviewing a few methods for estimating abundance of manatees. Manatee populations have been censused through aerial surveys for more than 50 years. Unfortunately, this method isn't the most reliable because it usually commits sampling bias. Surveys aren't random, they are taken at sites where manatees aggregate. Other methods for estimating abundance, like mark recapture, can be invasive and stress out or alter the manatee's behavior. Each technique has pros and cons that will be discussed throughout this video. When censusing with aerial surveys, pictures or first-hand counts of individuals are taken from a UAV, plane, or helicopter. One of the biggest advantages to using aerial surveys is that it is the least invasive method for estimating abundance. The manatees won't even know the observers are present. It's usually impossible to count every single individual, especially since they can be deep underwater. But unobserved individuals can be accounted for by creating detection probabilities and applying them to the estimated count. Aerial surveys are more accurate for manatees than other marine species because they are large and slow, making them easier to count correctly. Censusing through aerial surveys also leads to perception bias because observers can misinterpret the species they see or completely overlook individuals. Consistent detection is difficult to achieve, but the greatest barrier for using aerial surveys is the associated cost. Population estimations can also be done from a boat by distance sampling. Distance sampling is another method that is similar to aerial surveys. The observer travels down set lines, or transects, and records each animal they see, as well as the individual's perpendicular distance from the transect. Detection rates for the population are calculated with the data collected, so corrections can be made to the count. Animals located on the transect line have a perfect detection rate, but as their distance from the line increases, detection probability decreases. This assumption is used to create models that account for missed individuals. This method can be more useful than aerial surveys because you are closer to the individuals, therefore it is easier to see and identify the manatees. Acoustic devices can be attached to the boat so individuals deep underwater can be heard and accounted for. Using acoustic devices can increase detectability, but it will be very time-consuming. There is a lower chance of convenience sampling when doing distance sampling from a boat, because transects can be chosen randomly. Unfortunately, estimations can be inconsistent if data is collected in varying environmental or physiological circumstances. For example, manatees will likely be found. The mark recapture or mark recite method is highly accurate because you can estimate population size without counting each individual. In a mark recite study, individuals are identified through naturally occurring markings or markings that are placed by humans. Then, samples are conducted where the observed number of marked and unmarked individuals are recorded. The proportion of marked to unmarked individuals observed in the samples should represent the proportion of marked to unmarked in the whole population. Since manatees often have scars from healed injuries, we can limit contact with them by using the scars as natural markings. The mark recite method is cost-effective because you don't need specialized tools or technology. This method is also very useful for seeing change of abundance over time because the proportion of marked to unmarked individuals will reflect how the population size varies. It can be difficult to re-identify individuals sometimes because new scars can be made, changing the expected number of marked individuals. If the proportion of marked to unmarked individuals is low, there is a higher chance that you will underestimate the population size. If the proportion of marked to unmarked manatees changes, the abundance estimation will be less accurate. When it comes to estimating manatee population sizes, the best technique is likely the mark recite method. I think this is the least biased method because samples can be chosen randomly, so the estimates can be applied throughout the study area. Mark recite studies can be slightly more invasive than distance sampling or aerial surveys because you must be close enough to the manatee to correctly identify their markings. However, it's unlikely that the manatees will be stressed out because mark recite with natural markings doesn't require researchers to capture or make physical contact with the individuals. The mark recite method is also the most consistent because we can assume there is equal probability for marked and unmarked individuals to die or leave the population, therefore theoretically preserving the initial ratio. It's easy to see why mark recite is considered the gold standard for estimating population size. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my old footage of manatees and sea life in the Keys, and learned a few interesting facts about estimating abundance of manatees. Please leave questions and comments below so we can continue this important discussion.